Salvation is my best gift ever. You're the tree of life. I was lost, now I am found.
The topic of the day. Today, we are going to talk about a book I wrote about Ukraine. We're going to talk about Ukraine, not the same way the media talk about it. Ukraine. Kenya versus Ukraine revolution. Ukraine everywhere. As you know, everybody is talking about Ukraine, right? Why this book? Why did I choose to write about Ukraine and not now, but let's say 14 years ago? This was in 2008 when I wrote this book, but it was published in 2020. 2 years ago, the book was published. 14 years ago, the book was written. I wrote this book in 2008. So, what interested me and it caused me to write a book about Ukraine? I believe when I post this on Facebook in 2020 or 2021, everybody was asking himself or herself, why am I interested in Ukraine? Ukraine, right? So, let's see. Why did I write about this book, Ukraine and Kenya? Well, I come from Rwanda, and I knew what had happened in Rwanda in 1994, the genocide against the Tutsi. So when things happened in Kenya, 2007, 2008, it caught my attention, and then I started asking myself, what's going on in Kenya? Is it going to be another Rwanda? And then I started learning that it was about Orange Revolution. Then I said, okay, what is this Orange Revolution? Let me start learning a little bit more about it and see what it's about. Back then, I was still at university and decided to write a paper about Kenya Orange Revolution. So when I started doing research, then I found out that there is another revolution that had happened in Ukraine. Now, I have two revolutions. Kenya Orange Revolution and Ukraine Orange Revolution. Then my thought was, why both Orange Revolution? One is in Africa, the other one is in Europe. How come they have the same names? That was my curiosity that brought me to writing this book. Let's see. Orange Revolution. As I said, I heard that in Kenya, the then candidate, Raila Odinga, who was against Mwai Kibaki, was ruling Orange Revolution. Okay? Then I realized that in Ukraine, there was Orange Revolution as well. 2004, 2005, around that year. Then I started saying, how come in Europe, we don't hear people killing each other, but when it comes to Africa, people kill each other? Why? Why is it? Why was that? And it's still going on even today. This is how I started writing about the two Orange Revolutions, Kenya Orange Revolution and Ukraine Orange Revolution. So, then I used a comparative method where you compare both cases and see what they have in common. Guess what? The thing I found out can only happen by divine or by design. What's that? Very interesting. The Ukrainian Orange Revolution lasts for 2 months and 1 day, and Kenyan Orange Revolution lasts for 2 months and 1 day. Wow! Then I start seeing something very, 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 very unusual there. Why in Kenya and Ukraine, in both cases, these Orange Revolutions both last for 2 months and 1 day? Big question mark. That can only be explained by divine or design. So, I had to understand the power and the force behind the two. What was behind the two? Of course, special interests. In Ukraine, you had the West for those who were against the Russian-speaking people that were called Russophone. The people who were speaking Russian in Ukraine back then did not want any change, but those backed by the West want change, therefore overthrow Russophone from Russia. Now, let's see. The future about the Ukrainian Orange Revolution. Sure, since they had this internal conflict based on the Russian language, I knew that later on in the future, this will lead to something that will cause people to revolt, right? But my focus was why in Africa there is always blood, but in Europe, no blood. That's when I start seeing some patterns that the interests of the West within their own territory and the interests for the West within Africa, they are different. In Africa, they don't care if you kill each other, but they get what they want. But in Europe, they care because they want stability, right? So that means in Ukraine, the then established government was backed by the Western countries. Was it prophecy? How come I decided to put in a book? Why did I decide to put it in a book? Was it a prophecy? Well, let me see. I was very, very proud to have written this kind of book, even though I said that I came from Rwanda. I wrote this book about Rwanda. But again, when I started writing this book, the Spirit kept telling me, write that book first about Ukraine and Kenya. You see? That means this is an evidence how the Spirit of God works. Imagine writing about Ukraine, 2008, get published in 2020, and here we are today, 2022. We all know what's going on in Ukraine. And of course, it's based on what happened in this book. This is a direct consequence of what happened during the Ukrainian Orange Revolution, right? Of course, you know, time catches up all the time. They established the Orange movement in Ukraine in 2004-2005, thinking it was over, but here we are. You see, never underestimate the other side because you never know what tomorrow brings. Thank you very much for watching. May God bless you. Shalom, shalom, shalom.
Salvation is my best gift ever. You're the tree of life. I was lost, now I am found.